Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel. My name's Marissa and today I am doing my final July wrap-up. So I did manage to read 16 books total in the month of July. 10 of them were physical books, 4 were audio books, and of course 2 were ebooks. So the first book that I ended up finishing in the second half of July was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, and that I did listen to on audiobook, and that is of course about a girl who witnesses her friend get murdered in front of her. Basically, her and her male friend get pulled over by the police, and he is of course racially profiled and asked to get out of the vehicle, and he leans back in to check on her, and the cop thinks that he's going for a gun and he ends up shooting him. So basically the whole story is about the struggles that this girl has because she witnessed her friend getting shot. The cops are out to get her. The cops are pissed off because she's testifying against them. And then of course, when nothing ends up happening to the cop, the African American community is pissed off about it, and rightly so. And they start rioting, and things like that happen. So it's basically a pretty good mirror of what is going on in our society today. I thought this book was very powerful, very dramatic, and seeing it through the eyes of, a teenager was just heartbreaking. The fact that, she talks about numerous times in this, the fact that these people are having to teach their children that, if you're pulled over by a cop or you're stopped by a cop, keep your hands where they can see them, don't make any sudden movements, be respectful. The fact that people have to teach their kids these things in order to not get shot, it fucking kills me. It really does. It breaks my heart that people actually have to feel that way about it. And, I really understand now more of what's going on in the world and more of how other people feel. I grew up in a small town, in a small community that was not racially diverse, and I didn't have to grow up like that. So I don't know the struggles firsthand. So reading books like this is a pretty eye-opening experience for me. So that book was excellent. I definitely recommend that to anybody out there who is interested at all in learning more about what's going on right now. So it was great. So the next book that I ended up finishing was in my huge Jane Austen book, and that was Mansfield Park. Mansfield Park was definitely not my favorite story. This is the third story that I've read by Jane Austen, and it was really, really boring for the first half of it. Basically, you've got this girl, Fanny Price, who ends up having to go live with some wealthy relatives because her parents are poor, they had a lot of children, and they just couldn't take care of her. So she ends up going to live with her aunt and uncle, and she's basically like the hated cousin, like the poor cousin who comes to live with them, and she's treated like dirt by the two girls in the family. The brother is actually really super nice to her, and of course she has had a crush on him basically her whole life. And so then these other people of course come into the picture once she's older, and one of the guys ends up falling in love with her, and basically the whole family is like pushing her, oh, you gotta marry this guy because he has money, you have to marry him because he has money. And she's like, dude, there's something wrong with this guy. Like, I do not like him. I have watched how he treats women. He already made my cousins fall in love with him, and it was just a game, and they're like, oh, but his feelings for you are true, and blah blah blah. Well, I just have to say, without giving too much away, that she does get vindicated. Thank God. She does get her happily ever after, because Jane Austen novels have to have some kind of happily ever after. But throughout the whole thing, I really just did not feel like I knew Fanny at all. It was like she was even subjugated on the page, telling her own story. It was definitely an interesting way to do it. But I really didn't get a feel for Fanny until about halfway through. Like I said, the first half was really boring. Like, they could have completely cut all that shit out, and it would have made for a much better story to me. But, it's not my book. I didn't write it. So, yeah. It's still a halfway decent Jane Austen story, but it was really, really slow moving. So the next book that I ended up picking up was Beach Read by Emily Henry, and this, of course, is supposed to be like a rom-com novel. I do have to say that it is not what I thought it was going to be. It was more heavy on the romance. I thought we were going to get something different, I guess. There's hardly any beach in here at all, even though the two main characters are living at the beach. Yeah, it was interesting. I honestly didn't realize it was going to be this heavy on the romance. I thought the ending was kind of I don't know. There's a lot of the, misunderstandings in here, and, they misunderstand one another, and then they come back together, and they misunderstand one another and come back together multiple times. So while it was good, it was a really fast read. I didn't love it. It was just okay. So basically the whole premise of this book is January ends up, after her father dies, she ends up finding out that he had an affair on her mother, and he had this secret beach house which he left to her in his will. So because she is a struggling writer, she has writer's block and can't figure out how to write her next book, she ends up going to live at the beach house, hoping that it's going to break her out of her writer's block. Well, she figures out that her next door neighbor is also a writer and her college rival in her writing class. So basically it's kind of like a hate to love thing, although they don't hate each other for very long, honestly. So one night they decide that they are each going to write the other's type of story, because she writes traditional romance and he writes more of the like horror-ish genre, or yeah, I guess it would be kind of horror. I don't know. It's never really specified all that much. But anyway, so she ends up taking him on romantic dates to teach him how to write romance, and he takes her to go visit people who were in a suicide cult in order to get her head, into writing the kind of things that he writes. So honestly, I kind of thought that part was a flop also, because the books that the two of them write, you never really hear what he actually wrote. I mean, just a tiny bit, but it was more about what she was writing, but it still ended up being a romance, so it wasn't really his genre at all. So yeah, I thought that part of it was just kind of like a flop. So of course the next book was my highly anticipated Peace Talks by Jim Butcher. Now, I love Jim Butcher. You guys know I love Jim Butcher, and the Harry Dresden series is like my absolute favorite. But this book, if I had to read about how Harry wanted to rip Laura's clothes off one more fucking time, I was gonna throw my phone out the window. I got really tired of it. It was very repetitive. It was like every other page was, oh, her presence makes me want to rip her clothes off and blah blah blah. I understand, okay? For a little context, Laura is a vampire. She's a sex vampire, basically. That's how she feeds. And she gives off this aura of sexual energy, making other people around her want to have sex with her. Okay, I get it. I totally get it. I understand. But every other fucking page, I don't want to hear about it over and over again. I get it. Okay? So that drove me nuts. And then there was I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Oh yes, Jim Butcher went there in this book. And I'm not sure whether it was supposed to be a tongue-in-cheek comedy or what, but that kind of annoyed me a little bit, although it only happened one time, so I guess I can forgive it. I thought the storyline was really good. It of course was very fast-paced. It left off, usually Jim Butcher books wrap up very nicely at the end. There's a concluding line to it. This book I don't feel like did that. But I guess I have a little bit of context into this book, and the next book were supposed to be the same novel, and basically his publishing company told him that it was going to be too expensive to sell as one book, so they broke it up into two. So I kind of understand that the story wasn't really wrapped up nice and neat like it usually is, but it still was kind of annoying because now I gotta wait till September, October to get the next book. But, you know, I've been waiting 5-6 years for this one, so I guess I'll just deal. Overall, I still loved it. It just wasn't one of my favorites of his books. So the next book that I ended up reading was Fatal Throne, and this was written by various authors. So this book is all about of course, 6 queens of Henry VIII, his 6 wives, and it gives a little snippet into each one of their stories. I will say this is a good overview book. It is a good, if you already know the history, you already know all this stuff. If you're not familiar with it, you might be a little bit confused, but it'll give you a halfway decent overview. I honestly did not think that this book adds anything to the historical fiction genre whatsoever. I don't. Honestly, each queen got like 50 pages, and then there was like a 2 to 3 page view from Henry VIII. I just don't think that this added anything to the historical fiction genre. There are so many excellent, amazing, wonderful books out there on each one of these queens, or even all of them that are all in one, that give you a better picture than this does. It just felt very disjointed. The fact that you know, Anne Boleyn's portion was all written from the perspective of her already being arrested and in prison was so boring to me. That is the most boring point of her story. There are so many other vibrant ways they could have told her, and they told it from prison. Like, I understand that was like, you know, the worst point for her, but you know, come on, there are many, many other points in Anne Boleyn's story you could have told it from, but telling it from prison was not for me. So honestly, I would not recommend this book. I don't think it added anything at all. And if you already have a love for the Tudors, there are so many other books out there you can read before picking this one up. So save yourself the trouble and just don't do it. The next book that I ended up picking up was The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell, that I listened to on audiobook. That was an interesting story. It was kind of like a suspense mystery thing. Basically, you're getting the story told from 2 timelines. There is this girl who was adopted, and she gets this letter on her 25th birthday basically saying she inherited a house from her birth parents. Well, she knows like pretty much nothing about her birth parents except that they died in a car accident. Or did they? Wrong. Her parents died in a murder-suicide cult in the house that she just inherited. So a lot of it is her journey going to the house and figuring out what's going on, and she had some siblings that she has no idea where they are, and then the other part of it is getting told from her brother's point of view from when he was a teenager and what happened in the house. And so him and his parents basically lose a bunch of their money, even though they're living in this like extravagant mansion, and his parents end up letting these people move in with them, and things start to change for the weirder and the worse. So basically it's the whole story of what happened. I thought it was definitely interesting. It really wasn't my cup of tea, I guess. It was just something to listen to. So I definitely enjoyed it, but not like I wouldn't listen to it again. You know, it was alright. So the next book that I read was What Have You Done by Matthew Farrell, and that I read on ebook. That was a crime thriller, and that was about these 2 brothers who, when they were kids, their mother tried to kill them because her husband died and she basically lost her mind. So she thought, I'm going to put the whole family back together again, so I'm going to kill my sons and then kill myself. So yeah, that's how the book starts out. And then both of them end up becoming cops later on, while this one brother wakes up and he has no memory of the night before. Well, he finds out that his mistress, basically, because he has a wife, he finds out that his mistress got murdered. Well, he can't account for his time. Things start adding up. Evidence starts piling up against him, and his brother are trying to hide it because of course they don't want him to go to prison because nobody thinks that he really did it. So honestly, I was really, really shocked by the whodunit. Like, I kind of had an idea in my mind in the beginning that it might be this person, then I was like, oh no, maybe not. Well, it ended up yeah, it ended up being like somebody totally off the wall that I didn't really think of, that, yeah. So it was really good. I actually really enjoyed reading that, and I would definitely recommend that book to anybody who enjoys crime thrillers. So the next book that I read was The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. This is a fairly new pickup for me. I was not expecting what I got. This novel changes so many times. When you think you know what this book is about, think fucking again, because it's gonna change and change and change. And I think this book was done really well. Basically, Tao is the main character, and basically this world that they are living in is constantly at war. They're at war fighting these indigenous peoples, and they were the invaders like 200 years before, and now they're just trying to defend what they took 200 years ago. And things are getting worse. Tao's father ends up getting killed, and he ends up going on this revenge mission. So pretty much everybody has to go into the military in some form or another in this world. So Tao goes into the military, and of course his only aim is revenge. He wants revenge for his father's death. Yeah, it was... I can't really say too much more because there are so many twists in this book. Honestly, I thought I knew what it was about halfway through, and then all of a sudden it changed. And then I was like, okay, I got the gist now, Nope, then it changed again. And the ending, yeah, wow. So, let me just say you will be pleasantly surprised by this book. I am not a person who likes very battle heavy like descriptions of fights and all that. I find it really boring, and most of this book is that, but I really was not bored. I think there was enough dialogue, internal strife going on during these battles also, that it made reading the battles and trying to imagine it better. So yeah, I thought this was an excellent book for sure. And finally, the very last book that I read in the month of July was Into the Water by Paula Hawkins. Yes, I have this in physical book, although I read it in audiobook. I don't know, I got this book for cheap, so when I found it on audiobook, I was like, yeah, screw it, I'll get it off my TBR. So this book was about this town that has, this is what they call a drowning pool, and there have been tons and tons of women who commit suicide at this drowning pool, basically throw themselves off of it and die. Well, this woman comes back to town because her sister killed herself, and she has to come back to town to take care of her niece. And her sister had been writing a book on this drowning pool and all of the women that had died there. So basically this is kind of like a crime thriller mystery. So you're getting the perspective from the sister, but also other people in the town, so it shifts perspective a lot. I have to say that I was very confused on some of the relationships and interconnectedness of people. It probably would have been better had I read the physical book and not listened to it on audiobook. I probably would have followed along better. So I did get very confused at times, but then all of a sudden they would say something and I'm like, oh, okay, now I know who that person is, like 3/4 of the way through the book. So yeah, I thought it was interesting, groundbreaking, no, but you know, it was interesting. It's just, this is still just not really my genre. I don't even know why I keep picking up books like this, because the cover looks cool. I don't know. Don't come at me. It's just me. I just like purchasing books, I guess. So yeah, I thought it was an interesting book. I mean, it was a solid middle of the road book for me. So anyway, that is all I have for all the books that I read in July. Let me know down in the comments what you guys have read, what you thought your favorite books were for this month. Did any of the books that I read, have you read them? What did you think of them? And anyway, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching my video. I upload every Wednesday and Saturday, and I would really love it if you would like, comment, and subscribe my videos. Have a great day.